So for the next part of this tutorial, I'm going to go back to having that original image of the powerboat on its original canvas. So we're no longer on A3. I'll just zoom out to show you that. The shortcuts for zooming in and out is Control and plus to zoom in, Control and minus to zoom out. Or if you're on a Mac, it's the Apple key and plus and Apple key and minus. So you can see I'm no longer on the A4 canvas. The A4 canvas is actually here. And if I just move around, you can see that there's the big white background. I'll move that eraser tool out of the way. You can see what's going on. Now, what I actually want to do with the boat is edit it quite a lot. So to start with, I'm going to actually take it off the canvas and go back to the original canvas, which just allows me a bit more control over the editing. You should generally, as a rule, try and edit your images on the canvas you start with before you bring them into your master canvas or your finished canvas. So I've gone back and got the image and I've pasted it back in a similar way to what we did before. Now, if you look over in the layers palette in the bottom right corner, there's a little eye next to the layer. I'm just going to turn that off and show you that there's a white background, and then I'm going to turn that layer off as well. Now with no layers on, you get what's called transparency. At that point we can put an image into the transparency and it will fill the area. As default we get a locked white background layer, and then we get the image that we've pasted on top of that. So what I really want to do is I want to remove this boat from the water, but I actually want to apply the colour effect to the water. What I really want to do is use an adjustment layer, and I'm going to use the Hue and Saturation filter, and I just want to make the water look bluer. So I'm just going to take the colours darker, but as you can notice, the colour of the boat is changing as well. Wherever I go, the colour of the boat changes, and it also changes the water. So if I just want to change the colour of the water without affecting the boat too much, let's just put that in the bin. I'm going to need to take the boat out of the water. Now to do this, I'm going to need to select around the boat and remove all the water. There's several tools to do that with. I can get the eraser tool, and I can look up in this toolbar and change the size of the eraser. I can change the shape of the eraser and the style of it overall depending on what brushes you've got, and I can start erasing the area, but that's not the tool I'm going to use. And also, because I want the water, I'm going to have to start by duplicating this layer. So I'm just going to select the layer, right click, choose duplicate layer. That will give me 2 of it. I'm going to turn layer 1 off, and I'm also going to turn the background layer off, and with layer 1 copy selected I can start erasing it to reveal the transparency. Now generally as a rule I try and steer away from the eraser, but I will let you know it exists because it's unfair not to. But it's not the best tool for this job, and it's not really the best tool for many jobs. What we need to do is select around this speedboat. So we've got a range of tools up at the top. These are all selection tools. If I choose the rectangular marquee tool, I can draw a rectangular shape. I can hit delete and it will remove that shape. There's underneath it, because it's got a little triangle in the corner, as most of these tools do. If I click and hold, I can get an extra shape up, get an ellipse, make an elliptical shape, hit delete. Again, it's not going to get close enough. We've got a magic wand tool, which if I click in the water, it will select sections of the water. And I can delete individual bits one at a time, but it will generally leave me bits over, and that's not going to help me when I'm trying to look for some level of contrast between the water and what I'm trying to cut out. So I'm going to use the lassos. Now of the lassos, there are 3 of them, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here to try and show you. Just try and get it big enough to fill the screen. There we go. Now to move around the canvas, you can use these slides at the bottom, or you can use this hand tool, which the shortcut for that is H. And I can actually then just drag the image around to the area I need to get to. Now I'm going to very quickly go through the lassos. So we've got, to begin with, a lasso, a straight lasso. Now wherever you take your mouse, this lasso is going to go. So if you've got a very steady hand, it's the perfect tool for many jobs. We've got a magnetic lasso, which what it'll try and do is grip hold of colour, and you can get quite quick with this, and it can become very good if you've got an image with high levels of contrast. And then you just take it back towards the start and double click to complete the selection and hit the delete key. For me, because this image that we're working on has got very square edges, I'm going to use the polygonal lasso. The way this one works is we have pivot points. Let's just click and you draw a line from the pivot point. So I'm going to start by going up quite close to the speedboat and then clicking and taking my next line out of that area to the next point, and then I'll click again. I'm going to slowly follow this tail. I'm sure it's got a more technical name than that. I'm going to follow that around the top of the edge, and back to the shift, just come around this red bit, back to the speedboat itself, and then I can keep following it around. Now if I'm brave I can go all the way around, but I've learned from my mistakes. Occasionally Photoshop will crash, so I tend to do small chunks at a time, hit delete as I go along. Now in an ideal world YouTube would give me more than 10 minutes and it would actually be quite interesting to watch somebody cutting out a speedboat with a lasso, but in reality it's not. So here's one that I did earlier. Now it just looks like the original picture at the moment, but if I turn off layer 1 and turn on layer 1 copy, you'll see that I've cut the speedboat out and the background layer is still on. If I turn off the background layer, you can see there's transparency. In fact, to complete the effect, let's go to Safari and I'm going to grab this picture of the desert. I'm going to paste that into Photoshop. And then all I need to do is drag the layer underneath my speedboat and select my move tool, which the shortcut for that is V. Just move the desert. So it might appear to somebody who hasn't watched me do this like somebody's crashed a speedboat into the desert and walked away. They've clearly got quite round feet to be walking with. But you can see that I've taken all the ocean away from the speedboat. I can put that in the bin now, just wanted to show you. Now if I turn layer 1 back on, I can then change the colour of the water using an adjustment layer. Now the adjustment to change the colours of a layer, to change the richness of those colours, is a Hue and Saturation Effect. So I'm going to grab that just in my adjustments palette, and if you look down in the layers palette now, you'll see that I've got an extra layer with Hue and Saturation attached to it. If I change the hue, I can change the colour of the water, but note the colour of the boat is staying exactly the same. If I was to turn off my top layer with the boat that I cut out, you'll see that the boat colours have been changing. But because I've got that original image over the top, the colours will stay the same. So at this point I can completely change the colour of the ocean. We can have whatever colour we really want, but I want it darker, so we're going to go to quite a dark purpley blue. And I'm going to try and make that white coming off the back of the boat a bit darker, make it look a bit more mysterious whilst making the ocean look a bit darker itself. I've also got the ability to change the saturation, which is the richness of the colour, so I can increase the saturation and make it really vivid to the point it looks horrible, and I can decrease the saturation to the point that there is no colour in the image. No saturation will be black and white. So I'm just going to leave just a touch of saturation into it, and that completes the effect. Now at the moment that speedboat now no longer belongs in that image, so I'm also going to apply a Hue and Saturation Effect over the top of that. Just take the saturation down on the speedboat. I can start to age the image just a little bit. So what I really wanted to show you there was the lassos and the simple, very simple adjustments we can make when we take elements of images and copy them onto new layers. Remember, always duplicate your layer to start with, so you've got the original underneath it. 1, in case you make any mistakes, you can go back to it. 2, if you want to play with the colour balance of what's in that image afterwards, you can. You've got the ability to. Also, use the right tools for the job. Sometimes the magic wand will be the best tool for the job, other times it'll be a lasso, sometimes it's a rectangular marquee. It all depends on the shape you're cutting out. The more practice you get with them, the better you'll get with them. What I'd advise you do for a little bit of training is go and find a few images, bring them into Photoshop and use a different lasso and a different tool for selecting all the unwanted areas in each one. That's the end of this tutorial.